Hey folks, Prepper Princess. So I am doing this video a little bit differently. It's in my car and I wanted to talk to you guys about the death of retail, or the death of retail as we know it. This is where I come to pick up my bottles and cans on weekends, and I just want to show you guys all of the vacancies that are happening across the US. This is pretty much everywhere, including in California. Now, this place is not completely empty. There are a lot of vacancies, but the problem is, first of all, when I first moved here, this was the place to go. This was an outlet center, and it was really the place to go. It had OshKosh B'gosh, Payless Shoes, pretty much any high-end retailer you could think of, or retailer you could think of, where you would come to these stores, and this is where you would do your shopping for cheap stuff. With the coming of the internet, things have changed, and all of these vacancies are a huge issue. It has turned into a homeless issue as well. That's one of the reasons why I'm able to pick up bottles and cans here. But the retail spaces become, empty, and so the people who own the buildings will lease to anyone who's willing to rent. And these are no longer retail spaces. Anybody who's willing to rent. Over there is a nightclub. There's a nightclub behind me. There's a restaurant that does a little bit of business. You go down here and there's like a gym and a church, and then there's a jujitsu's place. So that's like not normal retail. That's not really what this place was intended for. Those trucks have been there for months. I guess that they're just storing the trucks there. There's a furniture store over in the corner, and then there's a restaurant, and then behind me is additional empty retail space. And a lot of people, preppers out there, or people who are looking for views, are talking about the complete death of retail. And I'm going to play devil's advocate here and say that this is not, in fact, the death of retail, but the death of retail as we know it. So looking towards the future, I see a lot of people don't really want to leave their homes. If you have the ability to shop in your home online, you're going to take that, and time is money, and these days people are working so much just to pay the bills that the only time that they have is time to get on their computer, place a quick order, and have it delivered right to their house, because they don't have the time to drive out here a half an hour to get a deal. They don't have the time to come out here and go shopping. They need efficiency. They need something fast. So that's my opinion. I'm going to turn the camera around real quick. All right, and I'm back. So again, people are always talking about the death of retail, and they're going to these outlets, or these places where there used to be a huge source of traffic for income flow and purchases and buying and just sales all around. And they're using this as a reason to state that the economy is doing so horribly. And when one part of the economy is doing really poorly, another part of the economy is doing really well. So just in my humble opinion, it's not a death of retail, but a death of retail as we know it. The way that people are purchasing is changing. And if you work in the retail industry, this is something that you really should take into account. Is the retail industry the right career path for you? I also technically work in retail. I work in the billing department of a huge corporation, retail corporation. So this is something that I've been going over the last few years. Is this the right place for me? And I love my job. So, it's not something where I want to leave, but it's something where over the next few years, I think that the retail industry is going to get different. It's going to change. It's going to be more online retailing as opposed to mom and pop shops. Mom and pop shops are practically a thing of the past at this point. And, it's a change. It's not the death of retail, but the death of retail as we know it. It's a change. I don't know the future. I don't know what the future is going to hold. I do know that more of these retail shops, such as the ones in the parking lot that I'm sitting in, these are going to be relics of the past. These are going to be places where they may turn them into apartments. we're running out of space. We're running out of land in California. And it's getting to the point where, to be more cost effective, people are needing to come up with entrepreneurship, different type things in order to save money, so instead of tearing this entire thing down and building a huge structure from scratch, they may just make modifications and turn it into something completely different. And again, this used to be the place to go when I was a kid. My mom would always drive us out here for our school clothes shopping. Oshkosh B'gosh, Payless Shoes are the ones that I remember the most. I believe there was a Levi Strauss, a Miller's Outpost, if you guys can remember that far back. Miller's Outpost doesn't exist anymore. There was a Mervyn's. I believe there's a Macy's here as well. And they were all outlet stores, so you could get cheaper prices. There is a place called the San Francisco Outlets, which is a bit closer to where I live. And those are extremely high-end retailers. We're talking like Gucci, Prada, Nike, Under Armour, those really, really high-end retailers. And that place is just boom, and you're lucky if you can get a parking spot there. As a treat, I'll go there and get a Wetzel pretzel, but it's a long drive. It's even harder to park. But the normal stores like Mervyn's, Miller's Outpost, Macy's, Nordstrom, Oshkosh B'gosh, Levi Strauss, those are companies of the past. The companies of the future are things like Prada, Gucci, American Eagle, Lucky. I think maybe it's Lucky Strike, but it might be Lucky. I think it's just Lucky. Lucky Charms, Lucky. Things like that. It's the death of the old and the bringing in of the new. So my personal opinion is that these retail malls that have become somewhat relics of the past does not mean the death of the retail. It does not mean the death of the economy. It just means that it's changing. I don't know the future. I know that since it is changing, I should have to change with the times. Being myself with a retail background, I do have to change with the times, and I guess I need to figure out what that is. And if you also work in retail, I would strongly suggest that if you have a long career ahead of you still, that you try and think of alternate jobs, alternate things. And another thing with retail is that it used to be an 8-to-5 job. Retail is not 8 to 5 anymore. Companies want to be available for their customers almost 24/7. So the shifts that people used to get in retail were typically normal shifts. Usually retail was closed on Sundays. Now they're open 7 days a week, 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. And people who work in retail no longer have an 8-to-5 shift. They don't have normal shifts anymore. It's more like 5:30 to 2:30, and then you've got the people who work like 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. And a lot of people who were in the retail industry and really loved it are not willing to put up with the lack of work-life balance. Personally, my shifts are extremely strange. When I started the company I work with 8 years ago, I started with an 8-to-5 shift, Monday through Friday. They were closed on weekends. Now, my shift is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 5:30 to 2:15, Thursday, Friday off, Saturday, 6:30 to 3:15, and Sunday, 8 to 4:45. So you can imagine, we're just going to keep going and going and going, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse, which is why a lot of retail companies have revolving doors, is that, you get certain things taken away, you lose your work-life balance, and it gets to a point eventually where you're not really willing to deal with it anymore. So you need to come up with an alternate way of life, essentially. Anywho, sorry, I didn't mean to ramble. I hope that this has been somewhat enlightening. This is not the death of the economy. This is just a change, and it's going to be a change that's going to be happening over the next 5 years or so. So if you have time, I would suggest making alternate arrangements for your lifestyle. Do what you can with what you've got. Prepper Princess out.